Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about my experience with dealing with failure. Recently, I failed my CCNA exam that I took in May, and I learned a lot by failing the exam, and I thought that it would be a good idea to film a video for you to show you everything I felt during that process of studying and taking the exam and failing, and then taking the other exam and passing the exam. So I'm making this video to help you deal with failure in the future, and this is going to be a mental health related video. I know that my channel is not mental health related, it's more like bullet journal and stationery. But because I made this Insta story right here on the day that I failed the exam, and you guys said that it would be a good video to film talking about that, that's what I'm doing today. I'm also going to talk about some tips and advice and what I learned by failing an exam and all of this process of failing. And I hope that in a way I can help you, because mental health and dealing with failure are really important topics, and I really hope that this video can help you in some way. So I took my first exam on May 29th, and I was extremely nervous for the exam, like a week before the exam, because when I studied CCNA and everything that I studied, by the way, I'm going to have a link in the description if you want to check out the course that I took and the exam that I took. I'm not going to talk about that because it's not relevant. But if you're interested in knowing what I study, there's a link in the description for you. So I started studying CCNA, and basically like a week before the exam, I freaked out because I felt like I didn't know the things that were going to come up on the exam. I felt like I needed 2 more months to study and to fully understand everything, and throughout that week, until the exam, I studied every single day, and I was extremely focused to study and to pass the exam. The problem was that I was so nervous that I was going to fail the exam that I couldn't properly focus on what I was studying. I was just like making questions and practice exams, but I wasn't feeling like I knew the topics. I was just like studying just to study. Which was pretty bad. So the day of the exam came, and I went pretty okay to the exam room. I did the exam pretty fast, and I failed the exam. When I failed the exam, I cried a little bit, because you obviously fail an exam. It's not good, you're not proud of yourself. And I remember that when I finished the exam, I cried a little bit, but I wasn't mad at myself and I wasn't sad. I was just like, okay, I failed, no big deal, let's try again. Which, by the way, it's really bad because for these exams you need to pay around 300 euros to redo the exam, which is a lot. So I was a little bit nervous about that. But I failed the exam, and now that was my only option. I had to pay the exam again and redo it. And what was the weirdest part for me was that I wasn't sad that I failed the exam, and I wasn't mad. I was just like, okay, it happens. You're going to redo it and you're going to pass the next time. Because then I had lunch with my mother, and I went to the doctor for an appointment, and I was pretty okay. Like, if you saw me on the street, I wasn't looking like I failed the exam. And that was the weirdest part, because I knew that if I failed the exam, I was going to be super sad and super mad about myself. But that was not the case, which was really weird. So after the exam, I took a couple of days to just organize my mind and organize my time into studying again. And I basically studied everything again, which was a little bit boring, because you think you knew everything, and then you study everything, you take the exam and you fail, and then you have to study everything again, and you're like, I know everything. But that was not the case. When I started studying everything again, because I went to all the topics and I studied roughly everything again, I realized that I didn't know much about CCNA, which was scary because I went to an exam thinking that I knew everything, or most of it, and I didn't. So in that period that I was studying again, I discovered a lot of things, and I learned a lot of things from failing the exam. The first thing was that I didn't know all the things that were going to come up on the exam, and that I needed to study everything more in depth, which was something that I didn't do. And the other thing is that you can lie to yourself a lot. And I lied to myself by saying that I knew everything and that I didn't need to study. But that was a lie, because I had to study. And now I already passed the exam and I'm still studying, because these topics are really hard. And if you forget to study for like a week, you're down to 0 again and you need to start over and study everything again. So I rescheduled my new exam for June 26th. And throughout that period, I was studying, like I said, but like a week before the exam, I wasn't feeling like my exam was going to be in a week, which was weird, because for the first exam, I was extremely nervous, and for this exam, I wasn't. So then, like, a couple of days passed, and the day of the exam came, and it was in the afternoon, the new exam, and in the morning, I decided to study, obviously. And I couldn't study. Every hour I was crying, I was nervous, and I was shaking. And it was the worst feeling ever, because normally I'm a calm person. I am completely like calm. I don't get stressed by anything. And I was stressed the whole morning just by an exam. And I tried to study, but because I was crying and nervous and I couldn't be calm, it wasn't that productive. But then I went to the exam. And as soon as I saw the lady coming towards me to give me the papers and for me to sign those papers, I started crying, because I was realizing that that was the moment that I would redo the exam. I was extremely nervous. So, I went to the exam room and I was crying, I was shaking. And throughout the exam, that is like 2 hours, 2 hours and a half, I was crying the whole exam. I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the exam because I was shaking and I was crying and I couldn't keep calm in the exam, which is awful. And then I remember that I was on the last question and I felt like I was going to throw up, because I was going to see if I passed or not. And when I see on the screen that I passed, I couldn't speak and I was shaking, obviously. So after the exam, I went home and I was okay and I was celebrating, and I took a day to reflect in everything I learned in this process of failing and passing in a new exam. Now that you know the whole story and how I felt and my different emotions, I'm going to talk about the things that I learned on this journey. So the first thing that I learned was that you need to study every single day, and you can't think that you know everything. I always felt like I knew what was going to come up on the exam because I was getting pretty much everything right. But on the exam, the questions are harder and different, and you think you know, but you don't know. So what I learned was that you can't lie to yourself and you have to study and study and study. The second thing was that you can't underestimate your course. If you're going to do a course in the future and you think that that course is going to be super easy, I don't recommend going with that mindset to the course. You need to think that that course is hard and that you need to study every single day and always keep up with the subjects and the topics so you can be better at the course and know everything for real. And I'm thinking about making a video in the future talking more in depth about study tips for school and what I learned in this process study-wise. And in this video, I'm just going to talk about what I learned about myself and about mental health and anxiety and stress. And things about school, I will leave it for another video. Tips and advice for dealing with failure. The first thing is that you need to be positive. You're not the first person failing that exam. If you're going to make an exam, you're not the first person failing the exam. And you also have to think that everyone fails. Everyone fails at something. And one of the tips that I highly recommend that you think about and that you keep in mind is to be positive, because you can't go to an exam thinking that you're going to fail, which was something that I did, and I regret thinking about that, because that's not a solution and that's not healthy for you, and it's not good for your mental health either. And the other side of this is that what is the worst thing that can happen? Like, if you fail an exam, no one is going to die, right? The worst that probably can happen is that you need to redo it and you need to pay for it, which was my case. I had to pay and I had to study everything again, and I just lost a month of my life because from the end of May until the end of June, I had to study everything again, and I couldn't do any other stuff that I had planned on doing. That is the worst scenario, and looking back, I don't think that was the worst scenario that could have happened. Like, it's not that bad. Of course that you waste a little bit of time and you are frustrated about yourself that you failed, but it's the worst that can happen, on that situation. And my other tip, which was something that I only did for the first exam and I completely forgot to do it for the second exam, was that throughout May, I was journaling. I was journaling every single night, just writing like what I did on the day, if my day was good, if it was bad, how am I feeling about the exam, like what is on my mind, basically. And I will write everything down. And that helped me a lot because I was being too toxic for myself. I was thinking about the worst case scenario. I was thinking that I was going to fail and all that stuff, and that was what happened. But it's really important to take your thoughts from your head and put them on your journal, because you at least have a safe place, which is here. Here you are completely free and all of your toxic thoughts are in one journal. So you don't need to worry about that, and you kind of clear your mind a little bit for the positive things. And I think that helps a lot, keeping your mind positive. And to deal with anxiety, I recommend meditation, but I haven't done meditation in like 2 months, so who am I to talk about this? But when you're frustrated about exams and you think that you're going to fail, the best option is to be calm and to de-stress. So do a lot of self-care and meditate and do exercise, because exercise helps you a lot. And just to end this video, I think that how I dealt with failure was, I was pretty calm. I thought like, okay, you failed, no big deal, because there's no benefit of looking at your exam that you failed and crying every day. The best thing that you can do for yourself and for your future is learning with failure, because that's really important. And if you failed an exam and you had a really bad grade, the only thing that you can do is to reflect on the exam and see everything that you did wrong and everything that you can do right in the future. So if you know that you failed stupid questions, maybe you need to focus more. If you failed a lot of questions, maybe you don't know the subject really well. Maybe you need to study everything again and more in depth. And please don't look at your failed exam like something really bad. Try to turn a bad thing into a good thing, like I'm doing right now. I failed the exam, now I passed, but at least I'm putting all of my feelings and learning advice into a video to help you, and that is the best thing that I can do at this point. And if you learn with failure, it's the best lesson you can have from failure. You can't just like fail an exam, cry, stay on the ground. No, you need to stand up, you need to study everything again, reflect on everything that you did wrong, and redo the exam in the right way. Because if you stay on the ground and if you feel like a failure, you don't do anything in life. And I can guarantee you that this is not the only time in my life that I'm going to fail. And if you recently failed, or if you haven't failed, it's not going to be the only time that you're going to fail. You're going to fail many, many times in the future. I'm going to fail a lot throughout life. But the good thing about failing something is that you learn. And if you don't learn anything from failing and you fail again, you are doing this wrong. Life makes you fail on things for you to understand what you're doing wrong. And looking back, I know a lot of things that I did wrong. And on my next course that I'm thinking about taking, I am not going to do these mistakes again, and I'm going to be much more mindful about this topic, and which is something that I highly recommend you do it. So if you failed, don't stay on the ground. Don't act like you failed your whole life, because this is not a big deal. in that week, yes, it was like the bad day and it was the huge event that happened to me, was failing the exam. But now looking back and looking at May, it wasn't like a big deal, you know? And in 5 years, you're not going to even remember that you failed an exam. So why being nervous and why staying on the ground? Like, don't. You fail, you learn, and you win. And that's life. So if you're going to stay on the ground, you're never going to learn anything. It's better to fail and reflect on what you did wrong or what went wrong and what you're going to do better next time to be able to do it right and to win the next time. These are all my tips and everything I learned in this process. This video is just meant for you to understand that you're not the only one failing and you're not going to be the only one failing in the future. Everyone fails every once in a while, and some fails are bigger than others, but in an overview of life, it's just a little black dot in your life. And you need to pay more attention to the things that you do right instead of just focusing your attention on the bad things. On the good things, you feel really happy and you learn with them also, but you learn a lot more with failure. So don't look at things in a bad way. Try to always see the positive in things. You can see a lot of negativity if you see failure just as a fail and that you suck on that thing, instead of looking at the bright side and seeing everything you learned and everything you did wrong in the past and do it the right way this time. So those are all my tips and everything I learned in this process of failing and passing an exam. And if you have failed something in your life, I hope that you saw that as a good thing, because failing is part of the process. And I'm going to have a list of mindsets that I'm going to post on my Instagram to help you keep your mind positive, because just tricking your brain into thinking about the good stuff and having a good mindset, it's really helpful for you to pass things and to achieve things in the future. And if you don't know how to deal with failure the right way, I hope that I give that to you, because that was the aim of this video. I would love to know everything you felt throughout this video, and you can leave it in the comments down below, because this was obviously a really personal video to film. I had to go through all of the emotions that I felt throughout this process, but if I can help at least one of you to think about the bright side of failing something, this video was already worth filming. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and let me know other topics to talk about, because I want to bring more mental health related videos to my channel. Now that I passed the exam, I'm going to have a new video schedule. I want to post more times throughout the month. So if you have any other topics or any other video ideas for me to film, leave them down below, and I'll see you in my next video.